ever notice how everything these days is green? Green packaging, green labels, greenwash everything. But if recyclable packaging is really the answer, why are landfills still overflowing? When we grow up, we are taught to believe paper is good, plastic is bad. And if it said biodegradable, recyclable, or just eco on the label, we are saving the planet. But brands have gotten really good at flipping that story, even making plastic look like a hero.
With a little help, we can make a big change. Now made from 100% recycled plastic.
Sounds nice, right? Hello everyone, I'm Phoebee Lin. I'm a designer and I care about sustainability. But the more I learn, the more I realize we have been fed a myth. Not by accident, but by marketing, misinformation, and misaligned systems. Today, we are going to debunk some of the biggest myths around sustainable packaging. Not just for the planet, but for us as designers who want to do better. Welcome to Rethink. Let's break it down a little more. What does sustainable packaging actually mean? A lot of people, including designers, tend to stop at the material. Is this paper compostable, recyclable? Then it must be fine, right? But sustainability has stopped being about real impact and started being about how things look. We have started designing for aesthetics of sustainability. Muted color, leafy icon, soft touch paper, even if we don't always understand where those materials come from or where they end up after use. This is greenwashing, when something looks sustainable but actually isn't. And it's everywhere, but often invisible to both designer and consumer. To understand how these ideas show up in real-world design, I spoke with someone who spent decades shaping the future of packaging, Gerardo Herrera, Associate Chair of Brand Design and Strategy at ArtCenter. He helped build the school packaging design program, worked with both small agency and global companies. So I asked him a question. When you begin a packaging project, how do you think about sustainability as your design process?
I think that's always been part of what when I was going through Art Center, the whole thing at Art Center was called reduce, reuse, recycle. That was always the case. I remember even one of my projects that I did in my packaging design classes at Art Center was featured on Packaging Design magazine, which is really cool because it was all about, reuse, or, it was for toothpaste. So it was like the refill made out of aluminum and so on. So we were always thinking about these things back then. So that was always been part of what the training was at Art Center. The three R's, right? Reduce, reuse, recycle. So I've always carried that with me.
So yes, sustainability was part of the design education from the start, but it was often focused on the material level, not the whole life cycle. What we think about sustainable is often just the first step, but what happened after that is more important. Because even if something is designed to be biodegradable or recyclable, it doesn't mean it actually gets composted or recycled in real life. So let's talk about what actually happens. After the box is thrown away, the bottle is empty, or the compostable bag ends up in the trash. Slapping a recyclable label on something doesn't magically make it planet-friendly. In fact, most of it never gets recycled at all. According to the United Nations Environmental Program, less than 10% of all plastic ever produced has actually been recycled. The problem isn't just material, it's a system. Recycling works differently depending on where you live. Some cities cannot process certain plastic, and if the item's not cleaned or sorted correctly, It usually just goes straight to the landfill. I asked Gerardo if he sensed this kind of misunderstanding in industry, especially around material we assume are being recycled.
One of the things prior to all those things in the different companies that I've been with, it's always been about utilizing the different kinds of packaging materials. And in some cases, we assumed back then that those packaging materials were being recycled at the level that um, were being recycled at the level that we were told it was being recycled. But now, many years later, you find out that it's like only what 87% get recycled, or things get recycled. People also, behavioral wise, have a hard time understanding what to recycle, how to put, not every city or every, well, first of all, not every city recycles the same way. And then, of course, not every state recycles the same way. And not every country understands sustainability the same way. So Europe is far ahead of us in this area.
And it's not just recycling. Even compostable packaging has its own issue. Gerardo also shared a story about one of the most talked about eco-friendly packaging efforts that didn't quite go as planned.
Whoever said that's so impossible? That's not supposed to go there. Doesn't know me well. I know that today holds more. Yeah, so much more. So much more. Yeah, so much more.
Many years ago, they launched this compostable bag called Sun Chips. Unfortunately, that ran into problems because that bag wasn't being composting correctly, because it was designed more for composting in facilities that had compostable type um, processes. If you did it in the backyard, it wasn't composting.
The idea sounded amazing. A snack bag that disappears after you eat the chips, that's basically the dream. But the reality, most people didn't have access to industrial composting facilities. And if you threw it in your backyard compost pile, it just sat there, loud, shiny, and not going anywhere. It is a great example of how even well-intentioned design fails when it's not aligned with how people actually live. Now we know the system isn't always working, but as designers, we still have to make decisions. Materials, messaging, cost, and most of the time that means compromise. I asked Gerardo what challenges designers face when trying to actually implement sustainable solution and how those decisions often come down to more than just design.
Sometimes that can be very difficult to do, and very depends on also the client too. To spend an extra 50 cents or a dollar, because that's going to cause, it's going to be too expensive for the end user, consumer, to purchase that product. And so that becomes another whole issue, because then if people don't buy your product, you've just wasted all that energy in making whatever product it was, whether it was food or electronics or whatever that might be. And so when I look at it, I have to look at all these different factors. You know, basically it comes down to cost. Will we be able to use the appropriate materials and work within those materials so that it can, so that I could be purchased and still do good for the environment, and or utilize the recycling centers that utilize these kind of materials. And sometimes that's not the case, and we see that a lot across the board. So I have to just keep getting smarter and smarter on what to use, which is unfortunate and also fortunate.
So even when we care deeply about sustainability, we are often working inside real limitation. Tight budget, client priorities, supply chain issues, consumer expectations. It's not always that people don't want to be sustainable. It's that the system makes it hard, expensive, or even confusing to do so. That's why sustainable packaging cannot just be about using the right material. It has to be about designing smarter with constraint. Being strategic, being informed, and sometimes pushing for better solution even when it's tough. Honestly, if sustainability was easy, we'd all be doing it already. What we can do is start by rethinking what sustainability actually looks like, not as a chain or a checklist, but as a long-term mindset. We have talked about the system, the struggles, and the stories, but a lot of confusion still comes from the myth we have been sold. Let's break down three the biggest one and explore smarter way forward. Myth 1. Biodegradable means backyard compostable. Not exactly. A lot of biodegradable materials only break down in industrial composting facilities, not your backyard bin. Without the right heat, moisture, and the infrastructure, these materials just sit there, looking green, doing nothing. The label might feel good, but the outcome isn't always sustainable. Myth 2. Paper is always better than plastic. This one is tricky. Paper can be better, but not always. It often requires more water, more energy, and can leave a higher carbon footprint than lightweight plastic. The smarter question isn't plastic or paper. It's what is the full impact of this material, start to finish? Myth 3. Recyclable is circular system. It is nice in theory, but in practice, it's mostly a symbol. When we design something and say, don't worry, it's recyclable, we are putting our faith in a system that most of the time doesn't work. Just because something can be recycled doesn't mean it will be. The material has to be clean, sorted correctly, processed in the right facility, and a lot of places around the world still don't have that infrastructure. So what we end up with is the linear system pretending to be circular. Make, use, toss, but now with the Q triangle printed on the back. Recyclability isn't the same as reality. And if we ignore that, we are just designing for wishful thinking. So, is it hard to balance sustainability, cost, and aesthetics?
No, because you can make some really beautiful things with aesthetically, you can make beautiful things just with a simple paper. Like you could with, if you're doing something just on a straight corrugate, I mean, you can use just a simple little paper like this, and you can make it look premium or you can make it look cheap. It's up to you in terms of how you might design the graphic or how you might put in different kinds of features to it.
That's why I love this project by Grow. It's a perfect example of packaging that is not just smart but also beautiful. The design uses renewable fiber-based structure and eliminates unnecessary layers, while still looking premium, clean, and intentional. It proved that we don't have to choose between good design and good impact. We just have to design with more awareness, research, and creativity. After everything we have explored, the myth, the system, and struggles, one thing is clear. Sustainability isn't material, it's a mindset. It's not something you can just print on a label or solve by picking the trendiest green options. As a designer, we have to go beyond what feels sustainable and start asking what happened after this is used? Who can access to the right infrastructure? Does the material make sense in the real world? The good news is we do have power. Design can shape more than just products. It can shape behavior, expectation, even entire system. So next time you sit down to design something, ask yourself, is this sustainable in name or sustainable in practice? That is a line between greenwashing and real impact. Thank you.